Hey everyone, you should have your next book list out, your What Should I Read Next out in front of you, and be ready for some more book talks. This book right here is called Fighting Words. I'm going to click on it because I forgot the main character's name. I think it's Della, and I think her sister's name is Suki, but I just want to see. Della, 10-year-old Della. She always had her sister Suki. Their mom went to prison because she was cooking meth in a hotel room and ended up getting arrested. They end up going back to live with the mom's boyfriend, who you find out later was really not nice. He was caught doing some really bad things to Della. And so Della and Suki are living in a foster home. The foster mom is super, super nice and trying to help them have a better life. What we don't know is Suki has a secret the whole time too. She's spending so much time taking care of Della that she's not taking care of herself. I think the reason it's called Fighting Words is Della likes to use some bad language, and she finally trains herself instead of bad language to use the word snow. So that's kind of what that is. But it's Stella trying to protect her little sister, and this is one of those books that if this is too hard for you to read, then don't pick it up and read it. But it has a great message in the end about the power of our voice. The next one is Middle School Worst Years of My Life. This one is super funny book. Rafe and his friend Leo are at school, and they like to do anything but be at school. And so Leo comes up with a game. He's an artist too. Leo comes up with a game of, let's see how many rules we can break. And he makes this chart that says rules are for breaking. And Rafe is supposed to break as many rules as he can, like chewing gum in class, you get a certain amount of points, talking back to a teacher, writing on the wall, stealing something. The more strict the rule that they break, the more points they get. If you get sent to the principal's office, you get more. And so it's also his relationship with his mom's boyfriend, who's a lazy guy named Bear, who just sits on the couch all day and drinks this juice. And then one other thing in it, Miller is a bully who steals Rafe's journal and sells it back to him one piece at a time. So that's Middle School Worst Years of My Life. For those of you who read that last year, James Patterson has a whole slew of books in this series. So you can check out middle school. So if you've read this one, but you want to keep reading it, just write middle school next books. If you like sports books, I'm just going to ask you to write Carl Duker. Here's his name at the top. And he has a whole bunch of books. Carl Duker is actually, his favorite sport is golf. Ironically, I don't know of any books about golf that he has, but he writes about baseball, he writes about football, he writes about basketball, and he writes about track. Here, this one's a runner. This one Jim Candy has to do with a kid who takes steroids in order to get the body that he wants to have. This one, the main character sells his soul to the devil in order to, obviously not really, but in order to become a good basketball player. It's like, what risk would you take to be the best basketball player? High Heat. This one has a kid who's a relief pitcher, and he's rich. His dad gets arrested during one of his games and embarrasses him so much. And his dad says, "Oh, I didn't do anything wrong." And come to find out his dad did do something wrong. And because of that, he ends up not getting to stay in his house anymore. Something tragic happens to his dad early in the book, so that's not really a spoiler. He has to go live in a low-income housing and help his mom raise his little sister. Doesn't get to play on this elite baseball team anymore, and he ends up playing against one, again, not really a spoiler, but playing against the guy who not only moved into his house but took his spot on his old school's team. So there's a lot of baseball in it, but also a lot of family and overcoming hardships. And these ones over here I haven't really read, but if you like Carl Duker and you like sports, write that down. Canyon's Edge is another Truman. This one is, I can't remember the main character's name in it either. Let's see what it is. Nora. Nora and her father, there is a shooting, a random shooting that takes her mother's life at the beginning. And that's not really what the book is about, but it just shows you that they're trying to overcome that in the beginning. And one of the things their family liked to do was go hiking and rock climbing, and that's what she and her dad go to do to try to get over the loss of her mother. She's got a friend back home named Danielle who said doesn't want to be her friend anymore, and I think it's she just doesn't know how to respond to what Nora's going through, but she keeps talking about Danielle through the book. And then all of a sudden there's a flood. They're in this canyon and there's a flood that washes her dad away. And so her next step is to remember all that she's learned about what she knows about the wilderness and try to save herself, find her dad, and get them both out of the canyon. If you like ghost stories, you should write this author down for sure. The Collector is one of the most popular ghost stories that I've seen kids read. Josie is with her sister Anna, I believe, and she and the girls and the mom are moving to live with Grandma. Grandma has recently lost Grandpa and recently lost her mind as well. So they're going to try to take care of her because she just doesn't always say things that make sense. When we get there, Grandma says, don't go in the woods. There's 3 rules. Don't go in the woods. Don't go into the woods. Don't open the window, and don't bring dolls into this house. And so they meet a friend. Josie meets a friend at school named Vanessa, and guess where she lives? She invites her over to her house, and she lives in the woods. And guess what? She tries to give her little sister a doll. And they also leave the window open and continue hearing Josie. And so it's a pretty creepy book. I wouldn't read it at night. And of course, Grandma says things that make them think that there might be a ghost around. The Collected is a sequel to that. It's actually told from Anna's point of view. And I wouldn't say this one is as good as Collector, but some people really, really like it. And then there's also a whole bunch of other books by K.R. Alexander, there's one called Fear Zone, and then there's one called Bury Me, and I think Scare Me. So if you like scary books, you'll find them in the horror section. Write down that author to read. This one is That's Not What Happened. I don't know if any of you know the story by, wait a second. Oh, I see it. Sorry, I thought I was out of time. There was a story long ago called She Said Yes, and it was a true story about Cassie Bernall, who was in the Columbine shooting, one of the first shootings that we remember hearing about in the news. And she was shot, allegedly, by the school shooter because she said she believed in God. And she became very, very popular. You can actually Google Cassie Bernall and find that story out. Well, this story is inspired by that true story, and it's called That's Not What Happened. The girl in this story who says that she believed in God and was shot, his name is Sarah. And the main character in this story was there with her best friend Sarah. And she says, that's not what happened. There were actually 6 people who saw what happened in that same area. And they all have their own stories about what happened. When the main character tries to go to Sarah's parents and say, because Sarah's parents are going to write a book about what happened, which is really what happened to Cassie in real life. And the main character went to tell Sarah's parents, that's not really what happened. She's not the one who said that she believed in God. the parents didn't believe her, and the parents almost disowned her as a friend and said, how could you do that? Could you try to say that about her? But really what the main character wants is just for the truth to come out. I did a little research on this and found out that everything in this book is not completely true to what happened, but it is true that there was some question about that there was actually another girl who said that, and she later got recognition for it. So that's not what happened by, I can't remember what his name is, Cody Keplinger. Super good book. I will tell you it goes back and forth from different people, so it's a little bit trickier to read. The Skin I'm In by Sharon Flake. I have not read this book for many, many years. It's a pretty old book, but I noticed that Sharon Flake has a sequel to it called The Life I'm In. And so because it's been a while since I've read this, I'm just going to click on the book and read you the summary. You can see by the Goodreads how many stars it has, so it's a very, very popular book. Miss Saunders, whose skin is blotched with a rare skin condition, serves as a mirror to Malika Madison's struggle against the burden of low self-esteem that many black girls face when they're darker skinned. Miss Saunders is tough, and through this, Malika learns to stand up to tough-talking Charlize. And I do remember there being a bullying point to this. So this is The Skin I'm In. But then she wrote this sequel called The Life I'm In. And it says, it's the long-anticipated companion. So I guess it's not a sequel, but it has the same characters. And it says, my feet are heavy as stones when I walk up the block, wondering why I can't find my old self. The Skin I'm In, readers saw into the life of Malika Madison, a teen who suffered from the ridicule she received because of her dark skin color. For decades, fans have wanted to know the fate of the bully who made Malika's life miserable, Char. Now, in Sharon Flake's latest, the unflinching novel, The Life I'm In, we follow Charlize Jones, who with her raw, blistering voice speaks the truths many girls face, offering insight to some of the causes and conditions that make a bully. Turned out of the only home she's known, Char boards a bus to nowhere where she is lured into the dangerous web of human trafficking. Much is revealed behind the complex systems of men who take advantage of vulnerable teens in the underbelly of society. Char might be frightened, she remains strong. That sounds very, very good. That is not a book I've read, but it is on my next book list. So The Skin I'm In is the first one, and The Life I'm In is the second one. Free Lunch by Rex Ogle. This one has a lot of humor in it. This is actually a true story as well. Rex grew up in poverty, and he was in the free lunch program. But if you're in the free lunch program, it means you don't have to pay for your lunch at school. Now at Summit Lakes, we have a lot of kids on the free lunch program, but nobody knows it. You punch in your lunch number like everybody else, and nobody knows whether you're paying for your lunch or you're getting it free. Well, in Rex's day, he had to go through the lunch line, and there was a big notebook that they had to look through and he had to say, I'm on the free lunch program. Of course, he didn't want people to know that. And the lady would say, what? What's your name? I got to look through this book and find your name. And so he was very, very embarrassed about that. He doesn't get to be on the football team because there's not enough money in the family. His mom doesn't treat him nicely. His mom's boyfriend doesn't treat him nicely. And he has to take care of his little brother, Ford. There's some funny parts to it as well. And it's just, so it's pretty funny and it's pretty fast reading. I will tell you, my kids a few years ago, this was probably one of the most popular books next to Child Called It. So Free Lunch, it's a nonfiction book by Rex Ogle. And I'm going to stop there on this one. And you can move on to the next one, the next slideshow, whenever you're ready.